Welcome to the New Rules for Work Labs, where we're rewriting the rules of work. In our lab, we glean insights from the world's foremost minds, exploring leadership, team dynamics, creativity, artificial intelligence, and more. Join us as we dissect, analyze, and incubate ideas shaping the future workplace. Stick around to learn how we turn these insights into practical activities. Get ready for a journey into the future of work. This is the New Rules for Work Labs, where insights meet action. It's great to have you back. I think you don't officially have a podcast until you have to re-record an episode due to a technical issue. And I think this is the first time that we have to do that.
Well, I am honored to be the first. I'm honored to be the first.
How often have you had to do that, Matt?
We have, that's a great question. We have only had to redo one. We lost the file. It just didn't work. So it was bad.
What? Last time your first 4 minutes that we actually captured were brilliant.
Of course. So set the bar low. Set the bar low.
And so since it's been a while since we've talked to you, your book's been out now for several months, 80 some Goodreads reviews. How are you feeling about the way that's all going?
Yeah, so for me, the assessment of success of the book is, are people using it and finding value? And I hear from people that they are, so I feel really good about it. It's exciting, and I hope people are getting the value that it can bring to them. And I love talking about it and seeing that people are reading it and using it. So that's exciting.
So we're coming off last night. I was just looking at some clips from the Oscars. I don't know if this is something that you're interested or not, but there was John Cena, the wrestler actor, did a bit where he was completely naked on stage, except for the envelope containing the winner of the award that he was about to give out. And this sounds like a nightmare, right? This sounds like the worst case scenario everybody dreads when they're about to give a talk or they're going to be put on the spot. And here he is doing it.
Well, I don't think everybody should be naked in front of people, but I certainly think you can learn to be better at it, and you should. And I think that it's the book and the whole process of getting better at spontaneous speaking is a whole bunch of counterintuitive ideas. One is we can get better at it. Many of us feel like we're just born this way. Either I've got the gift of gab or not. And then that you actually have to prepare to be spontaneous. And that seems counterintuitive, but we do it in many facets of our lives. If you're an athlete, you do lots of drills and prepare, and then you go play the game, which is spontaneous. So yes, you can get better. I think you have to do a lot of exercising before you'd feel comfortable being naked in front of people. But
right, that's a lot.
He does a
lot of exercise.
Yes,
it was very clear.
He does. He does. When I watch those award shows, it's really interesting because everybody has the opportunity to prepare, right? If you're nominated, there's a chance you could win. So you could prepare. But I'm struck by the number of people that don't seem to prepare for that. And as somebody who's interested in spontaneous speaking, I think it's fascinating to watch what they do spontaneously. And often it's very emotional filled, and that's very connective and interesting to watch. It's just one of these things where, I'm all about do the best you can to prepare for the situations you'll be in. So I think if you're nominated for an award, you should think about what you might say. I do understand superstition that, if I really practice and prepare for it, maybe I won't get it. But I'd love to see these folks prepare just a little more.
So Matt, I'm curious. I'm guessing that a lot of them didn't come to you for coaching. Who does? Who are the people who you really hope to connect with most, and that are calling you back and saying, this thing has changed my world?
Well, I hope everybody I work with that has that experience of where they take some value away from it. So I don't have a target demographic, really. I think everybody can get better at communicating. I certainly do a lot of work with founders of organizations, be they tech or biotech or fintech, so lots of founders who are pitching their idea for whatever idea, for selling it, for perhaps getting funding. But I work with a lot of people. I just did some work with a group of lawyers. I did some work with a group of salespeople, some folks in the medical profession. All of us have to speak in a planned or spontaneous way, and I am honored and happy to help anybody. Now, I've been fortunate to help people who've had some rather high stakes presentations, but at the same time, I'm happy to work with anybody who needs some help honing and refining their communication.
As you were talking through your list, the number of places where there are high stakes communication in there that are unplanned, right? The doctor who's got the patient coming in and they have to give the family challenging news, right? Like
Right.
there are a lot of moments in there that are not necessarily folks who might be up for an award would would need to practice these skills for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, most of our communication is spontaneous. It doesn't happen in a planned way. It's introducing yourself, fixing a mistake. It's having to do small talk or give feedback, ask questions. So much of our communication is in the moment, and the stakes are often quite
So,
high.
what is something, and I come at this from a point, I remember freezing up on a presentation in high school. I remember doing this in a marketing class in college and giving a presentation. I remember doing this in one of my first days in grad school and just speaking in front of my cohort of 50 people. And I, d- I don't know exactly how it happened other than just I practiced it. You mentioned something that's counterintuitive that people can do to begin to get more comfortable with public speaking.
Yeah. So I think a few things. So in the book, I documented a 6-step methodology that I developed to actually help Stanford MBA students first, and it works for everybody. But a lot of it has to do with mindset, and then there's actually the messaging that you have to focus on. So we need to first address the fact that many of us get nervous when we speak in front of others, and so managing anxiety is critical. And that anxiety can happen as you're preparing for a planned presentation, or it can happen the moment the spotlight turns on you in a meeting where somebody says, "Hey, it's your turn to speak," or "What do you think about this?" So having tools and ideas about how to manage your anxiety, absolutely critical. We also have to disabuse ourselves of this notion of trying to do it right. The
Mm.
fact that we want to do it right gets in the way, actually, of us doing it well at all. So we need to focus rather on connecting with the audience, really delivering the message, being in service of them, rather than trying to say it the right way. And if we can just do that, manage anxiety and reframe these circumstances around connection versus perfection, that can get us a long way. And there's several other things we can do too. See these as opportunities versus threats. We have to listen better. That's a big counterintuitive notion that to speak better in the moment, you have to listen better so you can best understand how to respond, the nuance of what's needed in the moment. And then there's a whole bunch we need to do around the messaging. That's really the second part of this. We have to leverage structure to give us a place to begin and end. And we have to use that structure, among other things, to help us be focused. Many of us, when we speak in the moment, take people on the journey of our discovery of what it is we're thinking about saying, rather than actually saying it in a clear and concise way. So, a whole bunch of tools and steps that we can go through to help ourselves do better.
So I saw last night on your LinkedIn profile that
Yes.
you made a post about audience first. Why being
Yeah.
audience centric is important, and you say increases relevance, enhances comprehension, builds connection, and then their knowledge level on your topic, their
Yes.
attitudes towards your topic, their potential resistance points. I was struck by how many threes you're using.
So I like this notion of comparing spontaneous speaking and planned speaking to slow and fast twitch muscle fibers. You need
Mhm.
both to be successful to move forward. But they're
Yeah.
they're s- they're related. They're similar. They work in a similar way, but they're not exactly the same thing. And to strengthen both is really important. So I'm using that analogy in these posts, and I'm talking about what we do in the case of what you saw for audience, etc. And I do tend to present things in threes. And I have done a little bit of poking around, and there's the rule of threes, and everybody says three feels right. I don't know of any real good academic reason to say why 3 is better than 2 and 4. Personally, I think 4 or 5 is too many. I have a very simple rule. If I have to write something down, like going to the grocery store, anything over 3 I have to write down. That's too hard for me. So let's keep it simple. But 1 or 2 just doesn't always seem like enough. So 3 feels right
Right.
to me, and I do a lot in 3s, and a lot of the structures I teach people come in 3s: problem, solution, benefit, comparison, contrast, conclusion, past, present, future. These are all based on 3. Now, there's structures that certainly don't need 3. Many of your listeners are familiar with STAR, situation, task, analysis, results. That's 4. Somebody taught me a structure for writing sermons, and I love this one. It's
Oh,
me, we, thee, we, me. And I love it. That's 5.
it's a pyramid.
It's
It's
a
like a
pyramid. Yeah.
Tabata workout or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
Sort of, but no, I think structures in 3s feel good. I like it. I don't know of any reason academically why 3 is better than 2 and 4, but I do a lot in 3s.
I have to say, I recently did a program with a client on
Okay.
decision-making frameworks.
Yeah.
And, there are dozens and dozens of decision-making frameworks.
Oh, yeah.
And when you try to teach 6, they say, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
But if you were to only hand over 2, they're like, well, wait a second, our life is so complex.
Exactly.
3? Turns out 3 is magic.
Somehow, 3 feels like enough. I worked for a CEO once, and he would always everything he said, every question he said, "There are 3 things there." And I went to him, I said, "Are there always 3 things?" And he said, "Yes, because he challenges himself always to do 3 because he felt 2 wasn't full enough and nobody could remember 4." So there's something to it as
Based
well.
on the work we're doing with teams that are going
Yeah.
through change. So
Yes.
we are going to scenario the shiznit out of this. Is that
Okay,
cool with you, Matt?
I am ready to
Okay,
answer in
let's go.
3 parts everything you say about now.
Excellent.
So actually, this is a new one, and it's a little different. So, you stumble upon a viral LinkedIn post from an industry titan who also happens to be a friend, sparking a heated debate on a topic close to your heart. Eager to contribute, you draft a response brimming with insights, but a gnawing fear of sounding foolish holds you back. You can practically feel the weight of your professional reputation hanging in the balance as you hover over the post button, unsure whether to risk it all.
So for me in that circumstance, um, I when I have situations where I have feedback to give, I often weigh what is the advantage of giving the feedback versus the disadvantage of not giving the feedback. And that helps me figure out where I think I need to fall on this.
Mm,
And some of the time, now this is a unique situation, but some of the times what motivates me to say things is not the person who is receiving what I'm saying, but those who see if I've responded or not. So, if I'm a manager and I have an employee who's doing something that's not ideal, there's an advantage and disadvantage to sharing with that employee, but there's also an advantage and disadvantage of not doing it relative to what the others see. So I often will use that as part of my calculus as well.
right.
So I'm looking at what's the advantage of doing it, what's the disadvantage of not doing it. And then I'm also looking at what's the advantage and disadvantage for those who are watching my response or not. So is there an expectation in your circumstance or your scenario where I should respond and not responding actually says something? And so I would need to think through that. Now, what I would do to look at the messaging itself is I'd make sure is the message clear? Is it helpful and applicable to the audience, whoever that is, the target audience? And then I would read it out loud and probably wait a little bit of time before I send it out just to go back and check. I have learned in my life that when I send things out too quickly and don't review them with a little bit of distance, that I am often editing them or saying I'm sorry. So those would be some of the things that I would factor into the calculus there. Right.
So, yeah, a little different than on the spot, one-to-one communication where you can't really wait for an answer.
I am always
Yeah.
probably optimizing for saying something, but I would like you to have some caution put in it. I want to hear other people's
Okay.
opinions. I want to get insight. And so you are depriving people of that by being quiet. And so I would challenge you to finding a way to comfortably share your thoughts. Maybe it's not sending the email or the post. Maybe it's just calling the person up or sending a text, but let's let the person hear your thoughts. Maya Angelou says, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story in sight. And I think that can relate to exactly what I mean. We want to hear from people, and for you to hold it in and then to regret not sending it, or to worry about regretting sending it, that's a lot of angst. I would do some review and then I would send it.
Maybe I think that's a relatable situation. Maybe a more real-time situation. So another scenario, and you mentioned this a little earlier. The team meeting ambles along as your boss concludes a seemingly endless 45-minute presentation, leaving you momentarily dazed by an information overload. Just as you're about to mentally process the onslaught of data, your boss turns to you with a keen look and says, "So what are your thoughts on this?" Your brain races to organize a coherent response, desperately trying to recall key points while avoiding the awkward admission that you zoned out for a fraction of the presentation. As you begin to speak, you find yourself walking the fine line between offering constructive feedback and attempting not to
I
sound like
love
you
these
just woke
scenarios. I
up
still
full of
love these
power.
scenarios. So, first and foremost, this highlights the pressure that we put on ourselves to respond immediately. You can buy yourself time. So you can say things like, give me a moment to think about that. Or you can ask a clarifying question to get your boundary and your bearings. Or you can paraphrase what you heard to buy some time. You could ask somebody else to share their thoughts if that's appropriate. So there's a lot you can do in that moment that doesn't mean I have to respond right away. Now, that said, here is a perfect place for where we could use a structure. So I have a structure I love. I know Elise has heard me talk about this a lot, but it's what, so what, now what? 3 questions. What, so what, now what? So I'm going to, the what is my position, my idea, my update, my feedback, whatever. It's what I am saying. The so what is why I think it's important. And the now what is what I think comes next. So if I can take a moment to get my bearings and understand what the actual task I've been given is all about, then I can just share, here's what I think, here's why I think it's important, and here's what I think we should do or consider next. So having that structure, that roadmap, can really help me in those moments where I'm like, oh my goodness, what do I say? How do I say it? Where do I start? You just answer those 3 questions. It assumes that what you're saying is relevant and important and in line with what was said before. And that's where buying that little bit of time can help you to get your bearings straight.
To what degree is faith, is confidence in here that, like, I'm going to come up with something that is relevant here and I'm not going to sound like an
Right.
idiot
And many of us are
when I
afraid of
shouldn't
that.
have the
And we
job
need
that
to
I
let
have.
go of that because that presumes that there's a right way to
Yeah.
answer it. And there is no right way to communicate. There are better ways and worse ways. And there is
Yeah.
there is a level of faith in taking that first step. But if you prepare yourself and you have confidence in that preparation, that leap of faith is less high off the ground than the leap of faith when you don't do that. And so we often get in our own way. We
Right.
often make these things bigger than they need to be. And you can simply diffuse that by one, leveraging a structure. You can't, it's hard to get lost if you have a map, and a structure gives you a map. And if you do some preparations and drills and stockpile some things in advance, then you're in a pretty good shape when you have to take that initial step. So I do think there's a lot we can do to help ourselves. Now, I borrow a lot from improvisation and the methodology in book. And improv is all about show up in the moment, do what's needed. And if it doesn't go the way you want, that's okay. You can correct and adjust. I have this view of mistakes that I like to share with people. Many of us don't want to make mistakes, even though intuitively we understand that's how we learn. I like to look at mistakes as missed takes. We were talking about the Oscars earlier, right? A film producer or a director does lots of different takes. Doesn't mean any one take is wrong. It's just I want to see something different. So if something doesn't come out the way you want, literally like that clapboard, say take 2 and either say it again or use an example, tell a story, do something to get that point across in a different way. Just like an actor might stand or sit, might say it with a louder voice or softer voice, just do a different take. And that can take a lot of the pressure off of ourselves because we don't want to make the mistake. So instead, just think I'm going to do different takes, and that can be helpful.
And there are directors who will come in and
Yeah.
they'll get the shot that they want.
Yeah.
And then they tell the actors, I got it. Like, I got the one that we're
Yeah.
going to use, but let's just go through. I'm just going to run the film. And it takes the
Absolutely.
pressure off them.
Absolutely.
And
And the director in that moment is having faith that the actors can do something more free. And the actors in that moment feel more free and are grateful for the faith that the directors put in them. So, this notion of taking that leap is there, but there are things you can do to reduce the pressure it feels like or has.
Next scenario, man. Oh, yeah. As you navigate the grocery store aisles, engrossed in choosing the perfect avocado, you suddenly hear a familiar voice behind you. You turn around, and there stands your ex, also engrossed in the avocados, as if fate decided to make guacamole of your emotions. Awkward eye contact ensues, accompanied by an unintentional and equally awkward half smile from both parties. The tensions rise as you fumble to remember whether avocados are a fruit or a vegetable, desperately seeking distraction from the unexpected reunion. In a futile attempt to break the silence, you blurt out, ... And there you are, stuck in the produce section, contemplating life's avocados.
The salsa
and
dilemma
avocados.
that this brings up. I love these questions. And this one I vaguely remember. I remember the guacamole. Yes, the guacamole dilemma.
Yeah, I think it's
Yes.
because your emotions.
In those moments, I like to be curious. I like to be interested. I was very fortunate to interview Rachel Greenwald on my podcast, Think Fast, Talk Smart. Rachel's a fascinating woman. She is an academic and a professional matchmaker. And she's the first one to teach me this notion of be interested, not interesting. So in that moment, just ask a question and ask a question to get conversation going. You've got a great opportunity to start with just what's happening in the environment. I mean, if the whole awkward past relationship thing is too much to start with, you could literally say, are avocados fruits or vegetables, right? And start there. Or you could say, hey, I see you have a new haircut, or wow, I wonder what you're cooking for dinner tonight based on those ingredients in the cart. So I would start and diffuse the situation with just being curious and interested in what's going on around you, and then see where that goes. And in essence, in these moments like this, we feel like, again, we have to do it right. Like we're playing tennis and I have to ace the ball over the net. And that puts a lot of pressure on us and can put the other person in an awkward situation. Instead, see it like hacky sack. I just have to serve the little beanbag ball to you in a way that you can then return it to me, so we keep things going. So I would diffuse that circumstance. And then based on how you feel and what kind of response you get, if you get a spicy response or not, then you can decide what the next step is. So I think there's an opportunity there to make a great appetizer. And here's my little pun. If each person chips in, we can have a good conversation. You'll add the sound effect, the womp womp there. So that's good. Yeah, that's good.
That's good. That's good. It's been ruminating
There's no
in the
way
back
you would
of your
come
head.
up
You
with
say you've
with a
forgotten, but I don't
brilliant
think you
pun
have.
like that.
Well, I threw the
right?
salsa out there and I wasn't happy, so I put the pressure
Uh-huh.
on myself. I did a take two. I didn't say that was bad. I just take two. Let's try it again.
That was good. Spicy.
Yeah.
Oh, but I
Okay.
have one. My scenario is just a little bit more grounded in what I've seen happen. I'm imagining you've got a student, maybe you've got two, right, working there at Stanford, who hears what you've said and says, I am in fact going to practice because I'm a brilliant engineering student. I work with other brilliant engineers. We are going to go out for our first job. We're going to land it. And then we are going to create our own companies. And we know to be good at that, we have to practice.
Yes.
But we really don't have anybody to practice with. So, given our brilliant engineering, what we're going to do is we're going to build robots. And we will have Matt. Can you guys hear my
We can
dog?
hear the dog. Yeah.
That's fabulous timing. That is not a problem I have most of the time. And we can't hear it on Zoom.
It is
Let me
us.
go
You
figure out why
see?
my
So
dog is
we're
freaking out. See?
things come in threes.
That's right. So hold on a second. I'm going to go get my dog.
Yes. Right. Very cool. All right, Elise. The dog is
All right.
muzzled.
The dog is muzzled. I had my wind roars showed up, and they wouldn't just leave them at the door for reasons I know not. But
Okay.
All
right. So I'm a robot, or something's happening here.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got students. They are preparing for their career. They've taken your message. They've embraced it, and they are absolutely planning to practice on a weekly basis to speak spontaneously well. And they want you to practice with them. But of course, you're not available all the time. So they built an AI-enabled robot filled with your wisdom. What are some of the first exercises you have them practicing?
I love that. And so, in fact, we've created a chat mat where we've uploaded all the
Chat
transcripts of
mat.
all the transcripts from Think Fast, Talk Smart, and we're going to release it soon, where people can actually do what you're talking about, where they ask their questions and they'll get the responses aggregated across all of our guests. So, the very first prompt I think they should type in is. Whatever the scenario or situation, so if they're planning on pitching an investor, for example, they should go into this chatbot and describe the investor and the type of product they and have the AI generate questions that they could answer. I think AI is a great tool for helping you get outside of your head and think differently or take a different approach to some of these communication situations. So you can actually use AI to generate spontaneous speaking prompts, have it create a question that you would answer. I would then also take the answers that, or some of the key ideas that you think differentiate your product, and have AI help you with different audiences, saying, okay, one of our differentiators is speed and efficiency. For an audience of product managers, how can I be thinking about, or what terminology should I be using when I want to discuss efficiency for product managers versus efficiency for salespeople, whatever? As you well know, language matters. And if we can't speak the language of the people we're trying to influence or educate, that can be a barrier. So I think AI could be a great tool for helping you hone your message as well as practicing being spontaneous. So I would encourage my students to do that. And in fact, that's the function I serve for them often when they meet with me in person.
So I'm curious, as they get farther along, some of these tools have developed where they've got cameras on them, they've got microphones on them, and they could give feedback in real time. They find themselves in a situation where they're pitching and the audience wants to know, we see how your tools are wonderful, but how is this going to work out for first-time mothers and their grandparents? A situation where your young students have literally no way to relate to the audience. How do they answer these questions when they really have no clue?
Well, so I would push back a little bit, at least, because I think we've all been kids and we've all had some relationship with a parent. And so I do think we have ways of accessing some of the ideas and some of the concerns. And I think we can put it hypothetically. We can say, I can imagine a grandparent using our product might be interested in these things. And I think that's a reasonable response. One, it demonstrates perspective taking. And two, it demonstrates that in the moment, I can come up with an answer that's important, relevant, and hopefully helpful. So I do think I think oftentimes we can put ourselves in some perspective, give ourselves some perspective and relay that, even if it has to be hypothetical or subjunctive. If we were to do that, this is what we would think. Is that
I
too
like that.
is that too much of a politician answer for you?
No, I like the idea that you would say something like, I could imagine,
Yes.
and then follow it up with some questions, right?
Yeah,
Like getting
absolutely.
into that curiosity so you could hear
Yeah,
hear
exactly.
more. And then after people talk themselves into why their idea is so great, then you've sold your product and they did it for you. Yay.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. It makes it much easier if they sell it to themselves.
That's right.
Right.
Dave, what was your last scenario?
Well, I had one last one. It's kind of it's a little bit of a trope, I suppose. You step into the elevator, lost in thought about the upcoming meeting, only to realize your CEO is already inside, staring at the floor numbers with an unreadable expression. The sudden awareness of the corporate hierarchy hits, and you're torn between a respectful nod and pretending to be engrossed in the elevator music. As the elevator ascends, you contemplate striking up a conversation about the weather, but the high-rise office building eliminates any small talk about sunshine or rain. Your attempts to look occupied intensify, and you find yourself fixating on the digital display, praying for the elevator to move faster and whisk you away from this unexpected executive encounter. Finally, you muster the courage to say,
Well, I would, if I were in that situation and there was music playing, I would say Air Supply or Hall and Oates and see what he says or she says. Um, Again, in those moments where you never know if that moment is pivotal or not. There are so many people I know who, out of happenstance and just plain coincidence, have had fundamental changes in their lives, their careers, and you don't know if that's one of them. So, again, be curious, highlight something in the moment, and see what happens, and set the other person up to set the tone of the interaction. So, I think highlighting something might be really interesting, like, isn't it strange that we're only stopping on even floors this morning as we go up the elevator, or just some observation and let the person respond. And I have been in those circumstances where I am the higher status person, or at least should be, or thought, if you looked at it, you would say yes. And it's uncomfortable for that person too. So doing something to disarm the circumstance, make it just better, I think is a good step in the right direction. So I would probably make some benign reference to something and move from there, and then just follow suit with what comes back.
That's a great point,
Yeah.
that there's this symmetry to the anxiety, to the awkwardness, right? Like it's not just you. And I think your answer was exactly the same the first time we recorded this. You mentioned Muzak for sure. I don't know if Air Supply was the example, but it was, which I
Well,
think is pretty awesome, quite frankly.
There we go. I'm internally consistent, which is unusual.
And what's up with Air Supply? Like,
For
I have a
you, or
girlfriend
just-
who will travel to go see Air Supply, and I'm not sure what that's about, but apparently.
So
Awesome.
my wife and I did we had this friend who got totally into this trivia competition. I mean, he was like totally into it. And he played a bunch of 80s music, and we had to guess. I mean, we all knew the songs, but we couldn't remember the name of the song or the artist. And I was very proud of myself because I remembered Hall and Oates, and but I did not remember Air Supply. So that was in my brain from this weekend.
And that makes a great spontaneous conversation starter. No matter what group you're in. It's one of my favorite icebreakers with companies where they're bringing the whole company in to do some sort of event. And you get the CEO and the brand new intern and everybody in between in the same room, and you mix them up and you ask them to interview each other about not only the work and all that, but who was your favorite band growing up?
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that question is just very disarming.
Matt, where can people find you? Where can they find more?
It's been a true pleasure to chat with you both, as I knew it would be. And so I host a podcast, Think Fast, Talk Smart. We have amazing guests, including Elise, talking about how to make meetings better. MattAbrahams.com, great place to go for resources and connecting with me. And I use LinkedIn a lot. And if you're on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect with you there. So 3 places. Listen to the podcast. You can go to MattAbrahams.com. You'll see the book and other things, and then LinkedIn.
Rule of 3s for the win.
Rule of 3s for the win.
Well,
That's right.
On a 3s.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you for joining us in the lab. We appreciate our guests for contributing to the thoughtful discussions on the future of work. A quick nod to Podrick, our behind-the-scenes maestro, for making each episode possible. If you've enjoyed the ideas we've explored today and want to put them into action, check out our companion newsletter at labs.newrulesforwork.com for the practical activities and additional resources. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback is the catalyst for our ongoing journey into the future of work. Thank you once again for joining us. We'll see you next time in the lab.